Paramahamsa Pariva Jakacharya Astotara Shata Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Srila Satchidananda Bhaktivinoda Thakur Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarvabhuma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jaya Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhagana Jaya Shri Rupa Sanata Bhatta Raghunatha Shri Jiva Kapala Bhatta Das Raghunath Sa Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopak Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Dev Ki Jai. Tulsi Dev Ki Jai. Anantakota Kodev Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Gurunath Raj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Iskand Bharma Guru Ravinda Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
And I forgot Gora Pramanande. Haribo. All glories to Shri Shri Guru, Shri Guru, all glories to Shri Prabhupada. What did you say?
Big crowd there.
I know. It's okay. Good. You, we got on fire. We're good.
One of those called chopping back.
Oh, man. All right. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayam Namaskritya.
Narayana Namaskritya.
Naram Jaiva Narottamam.
Naram Jaiva Narottamam.
Devam Saraswatam Vyasam.
Devyam Saraswatim Vyasam.
Tato Jayam Yuridayat. Nasta Presho Bhattareshu. Nityam Bhagavati Sevaya. Bhagavati Uttama Shloke. Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, and unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by the rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Okay, good morning, everybody. Both of you. Haribol. All right, so we are reading Creation of the Fourth Order. Canto 4, Creation of the Fourth Order, Chapter 28, King Paranjana becomes a woman in his next life. And we're reading verse 59. And I cut this verse in half. Tasmim Stvam Ramaya Sprishto
Tasmin Tvam Ramaya Sprishto
Rama Mano Shrutasmriti
Ramamano Shutasmiti
Tat Sangadi Drishim Prapto
Tatsangani Dushim Prapto
Dasham Papi Yasim Prabho
Dasham Paviyasi Prabho
Tasmim Stvam Ramaya Sprishto
Tasmin Tvam Ramaya Sprishto
Rama Mano Shrutasmriti
Ramamano Shutasmiti
Tat Sangadi Drishim Prapto
Tatsangani Dushim Prapto
Dasham Papi Yasim Prabho
Dasham Paviyasi Prabho
Tasmin Stvam Ramaya Sprishto
Tasmin Tvam Ramaya Sprishto
Rama Mano Shrutasmriti
Ramamano Shutasmiti
Tat Sangadi Drishim Prapto
Tatsangani Dushim Prapto
Dasham Papi Yasim Prabho.
Dasham Paviyasi Prabho
Hey, please chant.
Tasmin Tvam Ramaya Sprishto
Tasmin Stvam Ramaya Sprishto
Ramano Shutasmiti Ramamano Shutasmiti
Rama Mano Shrutasmriti
Tatsangari Dushim Prapto
Tat Sangadi Drishim Prapto
Dasham Papiyasim Prabho
Dasham Papi Yashim Prabho.
Tasmin Ramaya
Tasmin Stvam Ramaya Sprishto Rama Mano Shrutasmriti
Tatsangari Dushim Prapto Dasham Papiyasim Prabho.
Okay, word for word. I'm going to turn it on for you. There you go. Okay. Tasmin,
Tasmin
in that situation,
that situation
Tvam,
Tvam
you, Ramaya,
Ramaya
with the woman,
with the woman
Sprishtaha,
Sprishta
being in contact,
being in contact
Rama Manaha,
Ramamanaha
enjoying,
enjoying
Ashruta Smriti,
Shrutasmiti
without remembrance of spiritual existence,
without remembrance of spiritual existence
Tat,
God
with her, Sangat,
Sangat
by association,
by association
Idrishim,
Idrishim
like this,
like this
Praptaha,
Prakta
you have attained, Dasham,
Dasham
a state,
estate
Papi Yashim,
Papiyashim
full of sinful activities,
full of sinful activity
Prabhu,
Prabhu
my dear friend.
my dear friend.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. My dear friend, when you enter such a body, along with the woman of material desires, you become overly absorbed in sense enjoyment. Because of this, you have forgotten your spiritual life. Due to your material conceptions, you are placed in various miserable conditions. Please repeat. My dear friend, when you enter such a body along with the woman of material desires,
When you enter such a body along with the woman of material desires,
you become overly absorbed in sense enjoyment.
you become overly absorbed in sense enjoyment.
Because of this,
You
have forgotten your spiritual life.
have forgotten your spiritual life.
Due to your material conceptions,
Due to your material conception,
you are placed in various miserable conditions.
you are placed in various miserable conditions.
Purport. When a person becomes materially engrossed, he has no capacity to hear about spiritual existence. Forgetfulness of spiritual existence entangles a man more and more in material existence. Such is the result of sinful life. Various bodies are developed with the material ingredients because of different types of sinful activities. King Paranjana assumed the body of a woman, Vidarbhi, as a result of his sinful activities. Bhagavad Gita clearly states, Striyo Vaishyas Tata Shrudaha. Sudraha, that such a body is low-born. If one takes shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, however, he can be elevated to the highest perfection, even though he be low-born. One acquires lower births when one's spiritual intelligence is reduced. Om Jnana Timrandhyasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshura Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Karamayam Dadati Swaparantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagratatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Savadetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakambitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Chakapate Gopesha Gopeka Kanta Radhakanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sutidevi Pranamami Hari Priya Panchakapatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patijanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai. All right. Well, we got another person here, Chris. Welcome. Yeah. I saw that video, yeah, and you were in that video in Phoenix, and I was like, what the heck? How did Chris get to go? And I didn't even hear about it.
You didn't even remember till the last second. We were just trying to buy races later, and Raj said, remember there's a funeral at Phoenix?
Oh. Well, yeah, I saw you playing cartels.
I'll think about it for about 10 minutes.
Auspicious appearance of Chris.
Yeah. Very nice.
My brother, sister's cousin's friend.
All right. So today we're continuing in this verse. We're continuing the story of King Puranjana, who's now reincarnated as Queen Vidarbhi. He previously was a king, and he was very attached to his wife, and so at the time of death, he was thinking of her, and therefore he reincarnated as a woman. He took birth as a woman. So now he's Queen Vidarbhi, and Queen Vidarbhi's husband, he just passed away. And as she was building the funeral pyre to burn her husband's remains, a Brahmin comes by and starts speaking to her. But this Brahmin's actually Krishna in the form of the super soul. And so the Brahmin asks her, don't you remember me? We're very close friends. We're eternal. I'm your eternal friend. And so the super soul is telling her about when you take a material body. And so the super soul is talking about when you take a material body, then you have material desires. And these material desires, serving these material desires, cause us to become forgetful of Krishna. And then we're placed in miserable conditions because of these desires, whether they're in this lifetime or the previous lifetimes that we've had. So, and then when people are serving their material desires, they become so materially engrossed. So I remember, being on, trying to distribute books, and what's the number one thing that, well, maybe one of the number one things that people say when you try to get them to come over to the book table? What do they say, Kirtan?
I'm good.
Yeah, Mother Sindhamani got it. I have no time. Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah. Either way, but yeah, they always say, I have no time. And that's because these people, they're materially engrossed, right? They're so focused on their material life that they have no time to hear about spirituality. But if you probably could, be able to take a bird's eye view of their life, you'd see, they have time to maybe watch TV or go drink some beers or whatever it is. So it's not that they actually don't have time. It's just that they're so materially engrossed. They just have no interest in spiritual life. Right. And so generally we'll see, like, when people are poor or they're in hard conditions, they're more receptive to spirituality. And you know, why is that? Well, maybe it's because they don't have anything else, right? And they say, well, maybe they're hedging their bets, right? Who was it that said that there's like a good bet, you know, even if you're ambivalent about God or you don't believe in God, it's just a good bet to practice anyway and try to believe anyway, because if you practice and spirituality, you know, then at least you have some nice friends, and then when you die, you can go to heaven, right? But if you don't, then, you know, and this is in the Christian terms, then and God really exists, you know, then you're going to hell for all eternity, right? Whereas if you practiced and you believe in God, but He doesn't exist, well, it's a wash then, right? And so it's like a good bet. That's what some people said. Do you know who I'm talking about? There's like a
Someone's wager.
yeah, someone's wager, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, so generally we'll see, like, when people are in hard situations or when they're poor, they're more receptive to spirituality, or perhaps even more devoted. But when they're rich, it becomes you know, a little harder to get their attention, and they might not be so receptive. So why is that? Well, it's because they have, you know, more things to distract them or entangle them in material things. But also then you kind of get this mentality that, you know, oh, I did it on my own, right? There was a study that came out recently about these. They did a study where they had people play Monopoly, and they gave some of the group like a whole bunch more money when they started than the other people in the group. And what they found is that as the game progressed, the people that were given more money, they were developing this sense of entitlement. Like, even though they had been given a great head start in the game, they developed this sense of entitlement and feeling like that they deserved to win these things, even though they were given so much more to start the game, right? And so we can see this attitude in humans as well. I mean, well, those were also humans, but in real life, not just in a study, not playing Monopoly. So yeah, you get this mentality, I did it on my own. So you can see this propensity in the human condition. Like when I was growing up, it was a big thing, you know, you had a rock star or something, and then they became popular, and then they would start, you know, doing solo projects or something, or they would, you know, start, you know, doing advertisements, and people would say, oh, they sold out, right? They sold out, right? Because they weren't holding to their initial, you know, morals, whatever morals a rock star has initially, which are different than our morals. But it's because as they became more popular, they started getting this mentality like, oh, I did it on my own. I don't need my band. I'm going out on my own. I mean, that's a tale as old as rock and roll, probably. So you've seen this, Chris? Yeah. And so that's that propensity to, like, once we have, you know, the ability to satisfy our senses in such a great way, we tend to be forgetful of, you know, how we got there. And ultimately how we got there is through God, through Krishna. So let's talk about entanglement and how sin can entangle us, or how easy it is to get entangled in things. So I have any of you ever, like, told a little white lie and then it got out of control? Has that ever happened?
I've erased that.
What's that?
I've erased that.
You've erased that from you?
That memory.
That memory, yeah, exactly. Right? So here's a little story that I found, and it's not like anything terribly important, but it is this boy was telling a story that when he told a white lie and what ended up happening. And he says when he was around 6 or 7, his mom had brought home some really good chocolates, and she gave them to him, and he liked them. They're good, and then she saved some for his dad. But the little boy, he really liked him, so he stole the chocolate that his mom had saved for his dad, and he ate it. And so then his dad came home, and his mom went to give him the chocolate, and it was gone. And she said, "What happened to the chocolate?" And he said, the dog ate it, right? And yeah, because he didn't want to get in trouble. So he said the dog ate it. Well, he didn't know that chocolate's toxic to dogs, right? So his mom starts freaking out, takes the dog, brings him to the vet, gets the dog's stomach pumped, the vet's very expensive. And and so the boy, he thought, he's only 6 or 7, he thought that Duncan, that was the name of the dog, that he was being punished, that this was his mom punishing the dog, was to make him throw up at the vet. That was his punishment for that. So the next day, she brought home more chocolate, and so he felt bad that the dog had gone punished. So then he took the chocolate and he actually gave it to the dog because he thought, oh, well, I feel bad. You got in trouble and you didn't get to have the chocolate. So here's the chocolate. So again, mom notices, or mom thought he ate the chocolate. And she asked him, how was the chocolate? And he said, well, actually, I felt so bad, I gave it to the dog. And he told her what happened. So again, mom freaks out, and she takes the dog to the vet again. It goes through this whole thing again. And this poor dog. So naturally, with the vet being so expensive, mom's, having to, figure out their finances. How are they going to pay for all these vet expenditures? She's looking at her finances, and she sees some unusual expenses, finds out her husband has been cheating on her. And the parents get divorced, right? So all because the little boy didn't want to get in trouble and say he ate the chocolate. And so in that way, you can see how just, one little lie can set off a chain reaction. You can become suddenly entangled in so much misery, right? So anyway, there's some other examples of this that are, from our own literatures. One example is Ajamil, right? Ajamil was a great, young man. He was a devotee, and he was a brahmachari, right? Was he a brahmachari? And and then one day he was walking, and he saw a prostitute and her client engaged in an embrace, and suddenly he just kind of became really lusty and wanted to see more of that woman. And he ended up taking her into his house. By this time, I think he was married. He was no longer a brahmachari. He was married to a nice devotee girl, and but when he had seen this prostitute engaged with her lover, he just really became inflamed by this. And so he decided to take that prostitute into his house as a servant, and that didn't work out very well. He ended up kind of destroying his whole family life and running off with the prostitute, and stayed with her for a long time. And they had so many children together, and they were doing so many, non-devotional activities. And to support all the children they had, he was having to do all kinds of sinful things to supply, sense gratification to his family, to make sure his prostitute wife was now taken care of, and their kids. And so he's doing so many sinful things. And so, he started off really good. But But he got easily sidetracked and entangled in so much things because he made one small deviation at the beginning by, looking at this lady and becoming lusty and entertaining those thoughts. And although at the end he calls out for his son on his deathbed, he thinks he's dying, so he calls out for his son, which he had named Narayan, which is the name of the Lord. And so when the messengers of death came to get him, they're really scary guys. They take you for trial when you've lived a life that was not in service of the Lord. But on his deathbed, Ajamil called out Narayan, and when the messengers of death came, suddenly the Vishnu Dutas came. The Vishnu Dutas are the messengers of God, right? And they came to save Ajamil. And they said, no, you can't touch him. He's chanted the name of the Lord, right? So Ajamil got another chance to do better, and he did. So another example, Sabari Muni, right? He's, meditating, doing so many austerities, meditating in the bottom of a river. Was it a river or a lake? It was a river. Yeah, he's in the bottom of a river. And, he's doing this for so long, so austere, doing these great austerities, so much so that he got all kinds of mystic powers and everything. But he just saw some fish mating in front of him, and suddenly he started sort of entertaining these thoughts, and then became entangled in this entire story. He ended up with I think it was 50 wives, and became entangled in family life, and was longing for the solitude of his watery river meditating, right? Another example would be Indra, King Indra. Indra is the king of heaven, right? And he got cursed to take birth as a pig or a pork, as Korsundar would say. And so Indra became a pig, and he had he got a nice lady pig, and they had little piglets, and he had a nice little pig life, and he's rolling in the mud, and he's enjoying himself. And it was time for the curse to be lifted, and also there was some stuff going on in heaven that needed his attention, and so some of his people came to get him and bring him back to heaven so he could deal with what was going on in heaven. And he said, "What? No, I don't want to go." He did not want to leave his pig life because he was satisfied. He was enjoying himself, right? And here's the king of heaven, right? With so many opulences, he's got everything you can want, and still, he had become entangled in the family life of being a pig, right? And he didn't want to leave, but they made him leave. So it's so easy to become entangled in the material energy. Then there's the story of Narada Muni and Krishna. I love this story. I'll try to tell it really briefly. But Narada Muni and Krishna are walking and talking, and Narada Muni says to Krishna, "I really would like to see your, this material energy. How strong is it? I want to see it." And so Krishna says, "Okay." They're sitting under a tree. He said, "Go over there. Go get me a glass of water, and then I'll tell you all about it." So Narada Muni goes to get the glass of water for him, and so he's knocking he's walking pretty far to this village, and he's real hot, and he's thinking, "Oh gosh, when I get to a house, I'm going to ask for 2 glasses of water so I can also drink when I'm really hot." So he knocks on the door, and there a beautiful girl answers the door, and Narada Muni's just kind of like dumbstruck because he's just, wow, you know how that can happen sometimes, and and suddenly, he asks for the glass of water, and suddenly he ends up, talking to her father and asking for her hand in marriage, and they get married, and they end up having a nice family. and then he becomes a pillar of the community, of the village. He has grandkids. He's got nice cows. I mean, just beautiful life, right? I mean, just beautiful life. And suddenly this big flood comes and washes away his house, takes away his family, his cows, everything. Even his beautiful wife, his grandkids, everything. This flood washes him away. And suddenly he does he call out to Krishna? I don't remember.
He's floating down the river.
Yeah, he's just floating down. Yeah, and then suddenly everything just, all the, the water recedes, and he's back by that tree where Krishna asked him to get that glass of water. And Krishna looks at him and says, "Where's my glass of water?" Right? And so that was a great demonstration of Krishna's material energy, right? I mean, he went to get a glass of water. Next thing you know, he's lived an entire lifetime only to be brought back to that moment where Krishna's like, "Where have you been? I've been waiting. I'm thirsty." So, yeah, and so this is all illusion. And it can't make us happy. These things cannot make us happy. Even though we may feel like we're satisfied, like Indra being a pig, he felt satisfied. But truly, that's not satisfying, because we're going to end up in so many miserable situations. I mean, what ultimately happens to a pig, right? They get killed and eaten, right? Is that satisfying? Indra's going to have to sit and watch his wife get killed and eaten, and his little piglets, right? Anyway, okay, so there's also King Yayati, right? Do you remember him, King Yayati? Yayati, yeah, sorry. King Yayati, he had stumbled upon a girl in a well. There's a whole really great backstory to this, but I don't want to take up too much time telling this story. But he stumbled upon a beautiful girl in a well. How she got there is really fun, but you'll just have to read it for yourself. Anyway, so he, helps her out of the well. She wants to marry him, so he marries her. He's a beautiful young girl. Her father is a great sage, and he has, some potency. And so her father, he knows how the king is. He's kind of lusty, he likes to have many different women. And so her father tells the king, he said, "Look, whatever you do, just don't sleep with her maidservant," right? And so the king's like, "Yeah, okay, I won't do that." And what do you know? What do you think the king does? He sleeps with her maidservant, right? Gets her pregnant. And so when his wife's father found out about that, he curses King Yayati to immediately succumb to old age, basically. Not all the way, but to just age horribly. So he gets really old. And so the king says to the father, he said, "Oh, please, but I haven't yet properly enjoyed, life with your daughter. Please, don't curse me with this." And so the sage says, "Okay, well, you know what? If you can find somebody who's willing to trade with you, basically, to exchange their youth for your old age, then you can do that." And so he asks like all his sons, and all his sons are like, "No, I'm not doing that." But then his youngest son, Puru, his youngest son Puru, he agrees to it. And so he exchanges his youth for his father's old age. And so his father's able to enjoy with his young, beautiful wife, for a long time. But ultimately, he kind of realizes the emptiness of it and that it's not satisfying. And so this is what he says. So this story's in the 9th canto, and if you guys are interested. But this is King Yayati's realization. Yati's realization. "A person who is lusty cannot satisfy his mind even if he has enough of everything in this world, including rice, barley, other food grains, gold, animals, and women. Nothing can satisfy him. As supplying butter to a fire does not diminish the fire, but instead increases it more and more, The endeavor to stop lusty desires by continual enjoyment can never be successful. In fact, one must voluntarily cease from material desires. When a man is non-envious and does not desire ill fortune for anyone, he is equiposed. For such a person, all directions appear happy. For those who are too attached to material enjoyment, sense gratification is very difficult to give up. Even when one is an invalid because of old age, one cannot give up such desires for sense gratification. Therefore, one who actually desires happiness must give up such unsatisfied desires, which are the cause of all tribulations. So the king realized the futility of trying to enjoy in that way, right? So, you know, the whole concept of satisfying our senses is actually a misnomer, because our senses really, as we try to satisfy them in the way that we're all taught, you know, since we're small children, is that not going to satisfy them. In fact, it's going to inflame them more. It's like, I have to bring this up at least in every other class. It's like the hedonistic treadmill. So the hedonistic treadmill, it's like you're running on this treadmill and you're trying to, you know, you're satisfying your senses, but you're running on this treadmill that's just getting faster and faster and faster, and you're never getting anywhere. You're not ever going to be satisfied. So you try to satisfy your senses, and now you need more to satisfy them. You know, you might be satisfied for a short period of time. And we can see this in, you know, like look at serial killers, right? You know, one thing they have in common usually is that they start with small animals, right? They'll start hurting small animals, and then they progress because that doesn't satisfy that dark desire they have anymore. Then they progress to like killing the small animals, then bigger animals, then finally humans, right? And so that's like, yeah.
We have a classic present example of Sean Combs.
Well, hey, look, right here, Puff Daddy. So that was what I was going to say. Next is we have Puff Daddy, right? You know, Sean Combs. He, you know, he had everything most people say they want, right? He had money, he had fame, he had women, he had all of these things, right? And still, now we're finding out now he's on trial for human trafficking, and all kinds of sordid details are coming out about his proclivities, right? Because he wasn't able to be satisfied by just, you know, quote unquote normal intimacy, right? And so now he's facing jail time, right? Because he couldn't be satisfied, right? And so he's now in a serious state of misery because his desires could not be satisfied, even though he had as much money as anybody could want, as many women as anybody could want, as much adoration as anyone could want, right? But still, he was not satisfied. He had to keep going. So it's not until that we become materially exhausted that we can really approach the Lord. So Queen Kunti's prayers, and Queen Kunti, we know, had been through so much hardship, right? She had been through so much hardship, and she was able to really see, you know, the idea of like when you're materially exhausted, then you can approach the Lord, right? And so her prayers are so beautiful, but she says, "My Lord, your lordship can easily be approached, but only by those who are materially exhausted. One who's on the path of material progress, trying to improve himself with respectable parentage, great opulence, high education, and bodily beauty, cannot approach with you with sincere feeling." Right? It's just very difficult. You can't serve, you know, your material life. What is it? What's that quote? You can't serve God and mammon at the same time, right? Yeah. And so,
Jesus.
yeah. So it's not until we've exhausted ourselves trying to satisfy those senses and realizing it's futile, right? It's not going to satisfy us. That's when we can approach the Lord. And Krishna tells us that he is going to tell us how to come to him, and he'll show us special mercy, right? Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, to those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. To show them special mercy, dwelling in their hearts, destroy with a shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. And so sometimes that special mercy, that destroying of ignorance with the shining lamp of knowledge, sometimes that can hurt. Sometimes that can feel like poison, right? Krishna says in the 18th chapter, that which in the beginning may be just like poison, but at the end is just like nectar, and which awakens one to self-realization is said to be happiness in the mode of goodness. So that special mercy that Krishna gives us, it might hurt at first, right? But at the end, it's going to feel like nectar. Some real life examples that we can see of this is, in addiction, like withdrawal, right? You're going through withdrawal, it's so miserable, right? But that's for the end result is that you're going to be off of that drug or whatever, right? So by taking on that little bit of misery, you're actually bringing yourself to a better place. Another example would be, say you're in a toxic relationship, but you're just obsessed with the other person. I see these kinds of relationships a lot, right? And then they're breaking up and they're miserable. They're so miserable, and then they're getting back together and they're breaking up and they're getting back together and they're just so miserable, right? But then when they finally break up for good, that's for them to be in a much better place, right? Even though at the time they're like, oh my God, this hurts so bad. It just hurts so bad, right? But then if they can get through that and not get back together, they realize, oh, I'm in a much better place now. And so, when Krishna is destroying that ignorance with the shining lamp of knowledge, just know if it hurts a little bit, that's okay, because it is special mercy. So sometimes when we're going through these like hardships, you can get pretty down, but just know that it's bringing you closer to Krishna. And it's only Krishna that can truly satisfy our senses and give us true happiness, right? So I'll end with these beautiful quotes. So we know this one, the supreme occupation for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service under the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. So, could you imagine you're ever being completely satisfied with anything, right? Even if you get, the best thing, ultimately ends up, falling into disrepair. Say you get like the best car that you ever wanted, right? Eventually, something's going to break on it, right? And it's not going to be completely satisfying, right? And Dhruva said when he saw the Lord, "Oh my Lord, because I was seeking an opulent material position, I was performing severe types of penance and austerity. Now I have gotten you, who are very difficult for the great demigods and saintly persons and kings to attain. I was searching after a piece of glass, but instead I have found a most valuable jewel. Therefore I am satisfied that I do not wish to ask any benediction from you." So Dhruva, he was asking for a kingdom greater than his fathers and grandfathers. So this was something greater than the universe. Okay. That's all, something greater than the universe, right? But when he saw the Lord face to face, he realized, I don't want any of that stuff. I just want to serve you, because he was completely satisfied, right? And then this last quote, this is from the Bhagavad Gita, I believe from purport, or no, Bhagavad Gita 6:20 and 23 through 23. In the stage of perfection called trance or samadhi, one's mind is completely restrained from material mental activities by practice of yoga. This perfection is characterized by one's ability to see the self by the pure mind and relish and rejoice in the self, and that's self with big S. That means the super soul, the true self. In that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness, realized through transcendental senses. Established thus, one never departs from the truth, and upon gaining this, he thinks there is no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of great difficulty. This is indeed actual freedom from all miseries arising from material contact. So we can be free of all miseries, right? If we just fix our mind on Krishna. So in conclusion, I just want to say that we should use this life, no matter if we have come from a lower birth, or if we're in so many miseries, we should use this life to endeavor to get to know and serve Krishna, and that's what will truly satisfy us. And so, is there any comments or questions? And then, of course, I did want to know if any of you ever told a white lie that caused so much entanglement for you. Yeah, you know, like a little lie. I told at the beginning of class a story of a boy that had lied to his mom about eating some chocolate, and then it snowballed out of control, and his parents ended up getting divorced. So, anyway, any comments, questions?
Sometimes the white lie can be the lies that good.
Give him the microphone, please.
I mean, this is
What's that?
white lie can also be the lie that's
Sure.
actually beneficial.
Yeah, I'm
Not-
talking.
Not a small lie. but
I'm
it's
talking specifically about one that
Yeah.
that became entangled in. Yeah. I once told a girl at the playground that I had my driver's license when I was like 6. And then like 3 days later, she wanted me to drive her somewhere.
There was one
I was so embarrassed.
when I don't know, I didn't tell one myself, but I was entangled in it. Once there was a van that was hit in the road,
Yeah.
and later on I discovered, as I was backing out that van from a very, very precarious situation, I scraped that van. And when I looked at the place it was scraped, I said, isn't it funny how where that car hit you in the road the other day is the exact same place that I hit the van. And isn't it funny that the wall, the color of this wall is the same color
That's on the
as the
van.
van that is the car that hit you guys? Isn't that something? And so then there was a series of very entangling circumstances that proceeded, in which I was deeply entangled, but I seem to have escaped it.
Yeah,
But
I remember that. That was an entangling.
you were also there in the
Yeah.
entanglement. I was going to say, though, I just think that story about Narada Muni is so cool, because this is the fact that Narada Muni and Krishna are just hanging out.
Yeah.
And that was just a day hanging out with Krishna that Narada Muni ended up, having a whole good life,
Yeah.
and he has to leave it. And there's an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation where Captain Picard gets sucked into this probe, and like in that probe he lives an entire life like with a family, and like he's like a child, and then he just wakes up, but he had that whole life, but it just goes to show it was like a dream, but it felt so real to him in that probe, like in that life he was living. His consciousness was there, but it was just a dream. So in this way, it's like our lives are like that also, it feels like real, but it's just a little flash, and then at the time of death, it's just one out of billions.
Yeah.
This circumstance, whatever it is we're thinking about, whatever sense gratification we're trying to meditate on, it's just one out of billions and billions and billions.
Absolutely. Yeah. If we can maintain that perspective, it makes it a lot easier to not be so attached to the material aspects of life, right? We just realize that this is just a tiny little blip in our eternal life, right?
And I just think that, like what it's going to feel like if you die, it's like you have to take birth again after all the work you put into Krishna consciousness, but then you're attached to something. It's like, like you got to go back. You're like so close though, And, You weren't close enough, though. You got to go back. And that's what happened to us in our last lives. So Bayasky says, the reason we're here is because we didn't go back the first time.
Yep. All right. Okay, Uncle Esther.
Prabhupada's translation purport again. It could easily be surmised by those who don't like women that women are just low-born, right?
Yeah.
But forgetting that part, because Prabhupada quotes one line from 932 Gita, Striyo Vaishya Tata Shudras. That includes all of us.
Yeah.
Did you mention that?
Not directly. I didn't feel it was really relevant.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole class was, yeah. But I knew you were going to ask about that, Prabhu, yeah. But I mean, for people that don't think women is a lower birth, you're not paying attention. I mean, women are persecuted throughout all of history, through all over the world. Women can routinely make less in their jobs if they're allowed to work, that is. Women are not afforded the same level of medical care that men are. So, I mean, if you're trying to get me to say that women are not a lower birth, that's not going to happen.
So you're saying that women are a lower birth because they're exploited, and if they were a higher birth, they could be the exploiter. I don't get the logic there.
I didn't say that at all.
What are you saying?
Where are you getting that I said that women can be the exploiter? No, I'm saying that women are a lower birth because look at how they're treated, right? I mean.
But what is that? Why does it make them a lower birth? Because they're treated badly.
Okay, well, it's not, if you're saying what's a good birth and what's a bad birth, right? So a lower birth would be someone that's born into poverty, right? That's a lower birth, right? So there's a poverty of care around women, right? So.
Okay, so that's your logic, that if somebody can be, it's less fortunate in this, but that's only in Kali Yuga, really.
Yeah, I just didn't think it was pertinent to this class.
Okay.
And I know you like to bring this stuff up every time. And I don't think it's pertinent, especially if you're not listening to the whole class and then you don't hear what I said and then you come in at the end and you're just.
Well, you didn't address it, you said.
Because it just wasn't pertinent. I mean, yeah.
Well, but it's pertinent if you're in ISKCON for 55 years and you see how people take this stuff.
Yeah, and you're telling me that women's not a lower birth then, with the way they're treated.
Well, I'd say it's all a lower birth.
Yeah.
We're all in the category of Shudra in Kali Yuga. Kalo Shudra Sambhava. And people conveniently just single out women and to try to assert their superiority, but it's just the bodily concept of life. We're all
absolutely
low-born because we stuck around for Kali Yuga. Okay, and I just have let's see, what time is it?
8:57.
Okay, I do remember a white lie, although it was a white lie as you meant it. It was a white lie that took on a life of its own and came back to haunt me. So, I was a young man, and this is proof of that I'm also lower birth. I was drunk as a skunk. I came back, from Portchester, New York, where we'd all go drinking because the drinking age was lower in New York. You couldn't drink when you were 21 in Connecticut, where I grew up. So we'd go to New York, we'd get drunk, we'd come back. And it was in my mother's car. God knows how I ever survived these things. I couldn't, Anyway, so I came back and then I was so drunk, I got out of the car and I forgot to put the brake on. So it rolled down, we had a slow, it rolled down slowly. I tried to get into the car and stop it. I couldn't, I was too uncoordinated. And it rolled down a driveway across the street and rammed into Charlie Yankas's 1950 Hudson. And then I was so mortified. Somehow I got the car, I pushed it, and I got the car back in the driveway, and it left a big dent in Charlie Yankas's Hudson. And so, and then the next morning I woke up and my mother, she said that Mr. Yankus complained that our car rammed his car. Did you do that? And I said, no. But then, of course, it came out that I did. There was no other way it could have been done. So it wasn't good for me because I had lied. That made it worse. But I did made it that I was drunk and then it's crazy. So, okay,
All right,
true confessions.
true confessions. All right. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Look, if you